It's a great blessing to see all of you this morning, and what an incredible weekend God's given to us. As we were planning the fall together, we knew that we were going to be in the Old Testament in Genesis, and as we connected once again with a dear friend of mine in an organization he's been with over the years, Walk Through the Bible, we thought it would be a great Sunday for us to just take some time and journey through the whole Old Testament. Now, we're not going to get through the whole thing this morning, but we have kind of 4 segments this afternoon, and we're inviting you back to be a part of it at about 12:30, quarter to 1. It'll give you time to get some lunch, come back. I'm going to challenge the men in my church to bring their families back this afternoon. And it's just reasonable cost. We've subsidized it for everyone. If you have trouble with that, come talk to me. I believe that it's really important for us to understand what the Old Testament message is, because if we don't understand the Old Testament and how God used his people through that time, we really don't have a full understanding of what the New Testament is all about. I told Warwick if he does a great job today, we'll invite him back next fall for the New Testament, all right? Now, you got to understand that Warwick and I have known each other at least 4 years. He corrected me. When we're our ages, we forget sometimes 4 years is like 40 years. And we've known each other 40 years. And when I pastored in Winnipeg, he was on the east side of town at East Kildonan Baptist Church. I was on the west side of town at Waverly Fellowship. And we've known each other. We've partnered together in different ministry things as well. He and his wife have had a long history of ministry, not only at pastoring in 3 provinces, but also been overseas with Operation Mobilization. He's been involved in missions in a number of different ways, including Jews for Jesus, and a number of ways in which he's been encouraging recently new artists within our country, Christian artists. And so he's also written a book. It's number 5 on the Amazon book list right now. And so we do have copies for that as well. If we need more copies, we'll order them. He'll give me an incredible discount, maybe, I don't know. But I'm going to invite Warwick to come. And why don't we welcome him this morning, all right?
Great.
God bless. All right, yeah. Well, we have been friends for 40 years. We've never competed about anything, although I did asked him how many grandkids he has, and he says 9. I said, 9? 8. Okay. I got a daughter who has 9 kids all by herself. I'm just saying, that's a good start, you know. And when my daughter told me she was expecting number 9, I said, honey, you know, there are 9 classic virtues. You know what virtue number 9 is? She says, no, Dad, what is it? Self-control. She says, Dad, we're way past that. Anyways, never mind. Where was I? Okay, so the whole point of this walk through the Old Testament is we're going to kind of teach you the storyline of the Old Testament in just 3 hours. We're going to start with half an hour just to begin, because there is a great storyline to it. And I want to help you not only know the storyline, but at the end of the seminar, if you don't know the storyline by heart, then you get your money back. Or you can try to get your money back. Oh, sorry. But my job is to help you memorize, to remember the storyline of the Old Testament. First of all, how many books are in the Old Testament? Here's a way of remembering. How many letters in the word old? Okay, this isn't a hard question. This is, how many? 3. How many letters in the word testament? 9. So you put 3 and 9, and how many books are in the Old Testament? 39. It works the same way in the New Testament. How many letters in the word new? How many letters in the word testament? 9. 3 times 9 is 27. So you put them together, and you get 66 books in the Old Testament. We're just going to look at the 39 in the Old Testament. And just to help you to get the structure of it, I'm going to take all 39 books and put them in 3 piles in front of you, okay? Pile number 1 is here, pile number 2 is here, and pile number 3 is here, okay? These are called the books of history. What are these called? The books of history. These are called the books of poetry. What are these called? Poetry. And these are called the books of prophecy. What are they called? The books of prophecy. Now we're going to divide the books of history into 2 unequal parts. The first 5 books of the books of history are called the Pentateuch. Penta meaning 5 and Tuch meaning toques. No, that's not true. Tuchs meaning scrolls, 5 scrolls written by Moses. The remaining 12, and we've gone to great research to find out what the technical terms of these are, the remaining 12 books are called the remaining 12, okay? And these are, when we're looking at the storyline of the Old Testament, we're only going to be looking at the books of history. This is the storyline, the 17 books in the Old Testament. These are called the books of poetry. There are 5 books of poetry: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and Job. Job, the oldest book in the Old Testament, doesn't have any mention of patriarchs. The theme of the book of Job is the sovereignty of God. But as we tell the history books, go through the history of the Old Testament, we'll be inserting books of poetry, because these books of poetry written by people who are involved in the history of the Old Testament. These are called the books of prophecy. We're going to divide them up. There's 17 books of prophecy, just like there's 17 books of history. We're going to divide them up in the same way as we did the books of history. First 5 are called the major prophets. The remaining 12 are called the minor prophets. Why are they called minor? Because all of the prophets were under the age of 18. No, that's not true. Got to find out whether you're listening. They're only called minor prophets because they're smaller. They're just smaller. The major prophets, in fact, one of the prophets has as many chapters in his book as there are books in the Bible. So how many chapters in the book of Isaiah? 66, right, okay. It's a larger volume, but they're not lesser in importance. They're just smaller, okay? So, just to review, how many books of history are there? 17. The first 5 are called the? Remaining 12 are called the? Remaining 12. How many books of poetry are there? How many books of prophecy are there? The first 5 are called the? The remaining 12 are called the? Minor prophets. Good, see, that's worth it already. You kind of got it together. Don't look at me like that. Okay, now in front of us we have a timeline, okay? Time was an invention of God. The story begins back there, but before the story was nothing. It was eternity. And time begins at a certain point, and it goes all the way across the stage, and it ends in eternity. So this little timeline is created by God for us. And he invented time so that we can only do one thing at a time. Do you know? I had this ongoing discussion with my wife who says she can multitask. And I say, no, you can't. She says, yes, she's a woman, so she can do a bunch of things at the same time. But it's really not at the same time. You really just go from one thing to another, whereas I'm like, just tell me one thing to do. And then I'll go to the next thing, right? But time basically is so that we can just do one thing at a time, and God made it for us. But one day we will exit time. Time will be no more. So at the beginning of when time begins, if I were to ask you, what is the first major event in the Old Testament, what would you say? What? Creation. Okay. By the way, how many of you have been to a walk through the Old Testament? Anyone? There's a few back there. Okay. So creation, there are 40 main events that we're going to be teaching in the Old Testament walkthrough. And I want to help you remember each of these events. And as we go through each event, I'm going to be teaching you a hand sign, which will help you memorize and remember the event, okay? But you're right, the very first event is the creation of the world. God created the world out of nothing. Tohu wabohu. Out of nothing, God created. And so the hand sign for creation is we take our hands like this, and we go creation, like that. Can you do that with me? Okay, go creation. Some of you are going creation. So God didn't just create Canada. He created everything, okay? So this is going to be a little different thing. Normally you don't probably do hand signs when Robin's preaching. But this is going to be a little different service because you're going to be remembering these hand signs, and it'll help you remember. So out of nothing, God created everything. And everything was beautiful. Only God could do what he did. We don't really know how. He just spoke, and it happened because the God of the Bible is the God of the Bible. There's some things we can learn about him by observing. We know that he loves daisies because he makes millions of them. And he does things, some things he repeats over and over again. But we know he likes individual things because he made you, and you're quite not like anyone else, right? And I'm not like anybody else. There's a uniqueness in all of us, and God made us in his image. And it was good. 6 days he took to create the world, the Bible says, and then he rested on the seventh because he looked at his creation, and it was beautiful. And he made the height of his creation on the sixth day, which was man. His name was Adam, and he made a helpmeet for him. She didn't have a name at the beginning because she was the only one. When he got out of his tent in the morning, she'd say, "Woman." Only one woman would respond because there was only one. Okay, just think about that for a minute. Later on, she was given a name to distinguish her from other women. Because everyone has a name now. Okay, so God made Adam and his wife and gave him a job to do. Work is not a result of the curse. God designed us to work. One of the hardest things I see, as a therapist, I see people who are despondent and discouraged, especially older men. And I ask them, "What are you doing?" And they say, "Nothing." How about doing something? Because you're made to do. God gave you hands, gave you a mind, gave you muscles. And we're never more satisfied when we're doing things. And even if you're retired, don't ever be retired. The word retirement is not in the Word of God. God wants you to keep on doing stuff as long as you can. If the only thing you have left is your mouth, that's the only thing that moves. Use it. Encourage people. Phone people. We're getting into a therapy session now. Please forgive me. Okay, so the first big event is creation, and God put the man and the woman in this beautiful garden and said, just enjoy yourself and name the animals. But there's one thing I don't want you to do. What's that? Well, in the middle of the garden were these two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He says, I don't want you to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For the day you eat thereof, you will surely die. Why did God do that? Because God doesn't want puppets to serve him. He wants people to serve him because we want to serve him. So he gives us boundaries. He says, this far, and no further. Okay, well, that doesn't seem like a hard command to obey, but it actually took man down. Satan, who had fallen, was once one of the angels around the presence of God, rebelled against him and wanted to get even with God and couldn't touch God, but could destroy what he created. And he inhabited the body of this great serpent, who was a gorgeous creature at the time. And Adam and his wife were walking by this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the serpent started talking and said, has God really said? It put doubt in the mind of God's creation. Has God really? The reason why God said that is he knew that if you ate of this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you'll be like him, and he doesn't want the competition. Yeah, so take it. It's really sweet. It's good. And the woman was tempted. She was deceived. Standing right beside her, the text tells us, was the man, Adam. He was not deceived. So when the woman passed the fruit to the man and said, hey, this is really good, take it, bite. Adam remembered that God had said, do not eat of this fruit. He took of the fruit and he ate it. The passivity of man continues to be the number one problem we have in the world. We're passive. We don't do anything. We just let it happen. We don't stand up and say, no, I will obey God. The woman was deceived. He was not deceived. He deliberately sinned. Who's that the greater sin? Adam. And the first thing we find out after they ate of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is they hid from God. Why? Because they felt guilt for the first time. They felt guilt. Were they guilty? Yeah, they disobeyed God. It was a small thing. It's a small thing. You know, I used to be a counselor in a federal penitentiary. I've never killed anybody, robbed any banks, not like your pastor. I don't think he's ever been caught. No, I mean, he's never, I'm sorry. No, he's never done that either. But I've thought of killing. Sin is endemic. All of us are sinners, the Bible says. We have all strayed from God. We have not followed him. And the results of it, when God says something, he does it. So they were exiled from this beautiful garden. Why? Lest they eat of the tree of life and live in their sin forever. But here's where the good part of the story comes in. The tree of life is now barred off by these angels, keeping them out of the garden. But the rest of the story of the Old Testament is preparing us in a timeline for another tree that was going to be erected over here, a dead tree upon which the Son of God would hang. But we're getting ahead of our story. But it's a theme, one of the great themes of the Old Testament, how a sinful man can come back into the presence of a holy God. So after we go creation, our hands are up here, then we go fall, because it's the fall of man. So do it with me, ready? Creation, fall. Now it's not fall, it's fall. It's a complete fall. And every area we have fallen. We have sowed the rebelliousness of our sins, and we've reaped a harvest of sin and destruction. And history shows it. So go creation, fall. And so life starts anew outside the garden. Adam and now Eve, she's given the name Eve, mother of all living. They have children. They intermarry. People say, where did Cain get his wife? Well, that time the DNA wasn't as corrupted as it is today. You could marry your own sister. Right now, it doesn't appeal to me at all. Nor should it. Okay, but that was thousands of years ago. Okay, and the family grew, and grew and grew and grew. It was God's plan. It was a wonderful plan. Sex is God's plan, and we should rejoice in it. Okay, so after the fall, things didn't get any better. Cain and Abel, Cain killed his brother. There's just one generation. And there was murder in the family. Everyone is responsible for their own condition. Just one generation. And much later, God came down and saw everyone is doing evil in the eyes of God. And it repented God that he even made man. And so God doesn't overlook sin continually. He warns, and in his mercy, he woos us back to him, but he doesn't force us back to him. So at this particular time, he chooses one man whose name is Noah, and he says, I want you to be a preacher of righteousness. I want you to preach that they can return to God, love me with all their heart, because I'm going to send a flood and destroy all mankind if they don't turn in their heart to me. And they listened to him, but they ignored him. He said, in the meantime, I want you to build a boat. It took him 120 years to build. That's kind of my timeline too. If you wanted me to build something, it'd probably take me that long. Because he wasn't a shipbuilder, and no one, why would you build a ship in the middle of this area? There's no water around here. But he built a ship for 120 years and said, God is going to send rain, and we don't even know what that is. But unless you're in this boat, you won't be saved. Well, people listened, but they disregarded. By the way, do you know what Noah's wife's name was? Joan of Arc. Okay. Okay, that's speculation on my part, okay? Okay, so after we go creation, we go fall, and then our hands are down here, and our hands start bubbling up, and we go flood. God sent a flood, and not just flood, not just an area, but the whole world was flooded, the Bible says, okay? Evidence of it all around. Okay, let's go together. Creation, fall, flood, okay? And God sent this flood, and only those in the boat and the animals that were there were saved. Only Noah and his 8 people, actually, 3 kids and their spouses and his wife. Only 8 people. And eventually they came to rest, the mountains of Ararat, and God said, spread out. There's just 8 of you, but it doesn't take many to make many kids, as we all know, okay? So spread out. And we're going to find out as we go through the Old Testament and the New Testament that often when God says do this, we do that. Have you noticed that in your own life? God says do this, and you say, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. Completely disobey. This is an example. God said spread out, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth. What did they do? The next few chapters, they all got together in the valley of Shinar and built this huge ziggurat or tower. Some people speculate, the kind of controversy, why did they build a tower? Some people say, well, it was probably because they didn't trust God that he wouldn't send a flood again. So they built a tower for somewhere for them to run out of the flood, you know. Even though God said, I promise you I'll never destroy the world by flood again. In fact, I want to show you this. Every time it rains, you look in the sky and you see this rainbow. It's a promise that God will never again destroy the world by flood, and he never has. Doesn't say he won't destroy the world by fire, but flood is out of the question. That was to be God's promise. And the promise was, here's a rainbow, and if you put an arrow in the bow, it goes straight up into the heart of God. That's the metaphor that it shows. You know, if I don't keep my promise, may I die. I'm telling you this, I will keep my promise. When God says he'll do something, he always does it. Many examples, not only the Bible, but I trust in your life also. Okay, so the flood comes, and everyone is destroyed except Noah and his family. They get out of the boat, and then they start building this tower. Some people say, well, it was also because they wanted to get higher to the heavens and worship the stars and the constellations. For whatever reason, they disobeyed God. Now, we serve an amazing God, a God of tremendous variety. He loves to do things differently every time. And now he says, okay, you didn't obey my command to spread out. This is what I'm going to do. It was great. I can just, if you go back there in time, you see the guy at the top of the ziggurat saying to the guy in the next row, hey, mister, pass me a hammer. And this guy's saying, qu'est-ce que c'est un hammer? Je ne sais quoi, un hammer? Hammer? Qu'est-ce que c'est? Le hammer. Alhamdulillah, ashkurallah. And every tier of the ziggurat was a different language. What do you do when you can't speak with the people you work with? Well, Robin, what do you do? No, I didn't mean that. What do you do if you can't speak the language with your workmates? What do you do? Well, you figure this isn't working. So all those who understand me, let's go over here. Let's migrate over here, and we'll start our own place. And so that was the beginning of the nations. So we go creation, fall, flood, and our hands are up like this, and we go nations, okay? So in this walkthrough, if I can encourage you to come back, we're going to do this. Everyone stand up, please. There's going to be a lot of motion and commotion, and we're going to do this, the first 4 hand signs together. That's where we go. Creation, fall, flood, nations. Give yourself a hand. You may sit down. Okay, good. Nations. Okay, now we've just covered the first 11 chapters. Wow, we've got a lot to go. But it's significant because the first 11 chapters of the Bible story is a wide-angle lens. It really talks about the beginnings of everything. But from chapter 12, right about there, onwards, it really is a story of one man and his family. Because now a new creation had begun. People were moving out. They spoke different languages. God was going to, because this was his idea, his creation, his idea. Man made in his image. He has something invested in each of us. Now, the rest of the Old Testament is a story of how God brings the whole world back to himself. And he chooses one man to begin with. His name was Abraham. Abraham lived in the Ur of the Chaldees, and it was the most advanced city of its kind. It had 3-story buildings. It had sanitation, unlike most of the cities of the world at that time. And God came to Abraham and made him a promise that he would, at this time he was old and his wife was older, and they had no children. And God says, I know how you've been wanting to have children. I will give you more children than you can count. In fact, you will have more children in your family than there are stars in the sky. And I will make you a blessing for the whole world. And I will give you a land of your own. Wow. Really? The Abrahamic promise, I will give you a family of your own. I will make you a blessing for the world. I'll give you a land of your own. What do you want me to do, Lord? I'll give you 3 things if you do 3 things for me. Well, what's that? I want you to leave Ur of the Chaldees, leave where you are. I want you to leave your family. And number 3, I want you to just follow me. Just follow me. Don't ask me for directions. Just follow me. I'll lead you to a land of your own. Well, that seemed like a good deal. And Sarah, she was married to him and said, that's amazing. But by the way, he didn't actually completely obey God. Sometimes we partially obey God, and God somehow allows it. He didn't leave his family. He took his father and his nephew along. Terah. Who was Terah? Let's take a vote, because there's some confusion about this. Terah. How many think Terah was Abraham's father? Put up your hand. Okay. How many think Terah was Sarah's father? Few. How many think he was both Abraham's and Sarah's father? Okay, you got it. They had the same father. Unbelievable, but not so unbelievable. Okay. In fact, that explains why on 2 separate occasions Abraham told Sarah, who was at the time 90 years of age, that, honey, you're so gorgeous. People will see you, and if they know you're my wife, they'll kill me to get you. Tell them you're my sister. So she did, and it's quite remarkable. How many of you are 90 and your husband looks at you and say, honey, you are something else, man. 90. What was she like when she was 35? Who knows? But he told a partial truth, actually. But we're going to find out a partial truth in God's mind is the same as a complete lie. But God's saints, that's why I like the Bible, it's filled with real people. They're not perfect. The only one that is perfect is Jesus. The rest of us are also rans. We are not, we still struggle with sin, which is the root of the whole problem. Okay, so we want to remember Abraham, and we'll get these stars and we'll fling them into space and go, Abraham, okay? Because this is the beginning of God's redemption story, choosing one man. So let's go, Abraham, on a little more emotion in it, okay? Ready? Abraham, and just review, creation, fall, flood, nations, Abraham. And so they followed, they left Ur of the Chaldees, they followed around the Fertile Crescent, and they came to the land eventually. They stayed in Haran for a while until Terah dies. And that was significant because now he was the patriarch, not Terah, but now Abraham was the oldest member, the top of the ladder of the family. And he came into the land. But they hadn't had a child yet. And they were well past childbearing ages. And they came into the land, and the land seemed great and glorious. But they were without child, and we followed God, and it took a long time to get there. It wasn't just an afternoon walk in the park. What are we going to do? Like, we're not going to have children. And I can just imagine Abraham and Sarah talking late at night in the tent saying, maybe we should help God out, huh? Sometimes God says to do something, and we need to help him out a bit, huh? Have you ever talked like that to your spouse? What do you mean, Sarah? Well, according to the law of Hammurabi, which happened 350 years ago, I understand. I was talking to Michelle over there. If you are a landowner like we are, and you have a lot of stuff to give to your children, but you don't have children, you can have someone who is in your employ, like a housemaid or something like that. You can have child by her. Sarah, what do you mean? I'm thinking Hagar. You know that lovely Egyptian handmaid we got. Why don't you have child by her? Not a bad idea. Guys, if you start trying to help God out, boy, life changes. God doesn't need your help. If he says he'll do something, he'll do it, but it'll be in his time. Of course, we have a problem with his timing, right? It's like, come on, people. When are we going to get this church done? Come on. His time. Hardest thing to do in all the world, I think, is to wait for the Lord to move, to work. Because in the meantime, stuff happens in our lives. we got to get ourselves ready. Listen to God. You can trust God. If he says he'll do it, he'll do it. Just because he doesn't do it in your time doesn't mean he's not going to do it. He'll do it. But they helped God out, and they had a son by Hagar, and his name was Ishmael. He was not the son of promise, but he was their son, okay? Because the promise was Abraham and Sarah. 13 long years went by, and they still had no son from Abraham and Sarah, but Ishmael, by this time, was 13 years of age, and now it was time. Now it was time. 20 years after the promise made, God finally sent some angels down and told Abraham, well, this time next year, Sarah will be with child. Sarah is listening in the tent, and she hears that, and she starts laughing. He inquires afterwards, Sarah, why you were laughing? These are men of God, angels. Why you were laughing? Well, she says, sorry, I wasn't laughing. Yes, I heard you. So we're going to call the son that we get Isaac, which meant laughter, which I think is poetic justice. Every time they called him in for lunch, they were reminded of their disbelief, and they laughed. God, really? We're going to have a child at this stage in our 90s. Yes, you will. And sure enough, next year around that time, they gave birth to Isaac, and Isaac was the son of promise. So we go Abraham, and with this arm we bring down the son of promise, Isaac. Okay, like a baby. Okay, do it with me. Abraham, Isaac. Let's put it all together and stand. You're going to get some exercise here this morning, okay? And we'll go from creation to Isaac. Ready? Creation, fall, flood, nations, Abraham, Isaac. Thank you. You may be seated. Wonderful. Okay, now the son of promise had come, and it was the start of a family. That's how families start, one at a time. Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. They were twins. Came at the same time. How many of you were twins? Anyone here twins? Well, look at that. Were you the older one or the younger one? But by how many seconds were you younger? 1 minute. Older or younger? Younger by how much? 16 minutes? Wow. They waited around for that. Okay. Well, no, you came. Oh, wow. What a shock that must have been. Everyone who's a twin, you know one of them came first, right? And it's like, well, I'm one. What was it, 1 minute? Yeah. Older? No, younger. Poor thing. Because the oldest one is like firstborn. And Jacob and Esau, an interesting story. Esau came first, but Jacob came out second, holding the ankle of Esau, like get back here. I want to be first, right? And it was kind of reminiscent of how his whole life would be. Jacob, the usurper, the one who was grasping for opportunities to be number one, because his whole life at the beginning of his life was like that. Jacob was the quiet guy who lived at home and watched Martha Stewart on the TV in the afternoons, whereas Esau, his brother, would be out there hunting bears in bear season and hunting ducks in duck season, and he'd come back and, Esau, me hunter. And Jacob, what you're doing? I'm just making something here I thought you'd like. What is it? I call it a mess of pottage, but it's good. Oh, it smells good. I'm so hungry. Give me some. Not so quiet. Not so fast. That's it. How about if you sell me your birthright, I will give you this as much as you want. Fill up tummy good. Okay. He took the deal. Wow, you despise your birthright that much to sell it for a bowl of porridge, or even if it's got really good meat in it? Because the firstborn got more than all the others. And you despised it. So, and yeah, he did, but a deal was a deal. Next morning, his mother said to Jacob, your brother is really angry about what you did the other day. Yeah, so what? Sounds Norwegian, but never mind. That's where they started. No. So what? Well, I think you need to go visit my brother, your uncle Laban. He's up in the North Country. You go visit him, and I will tell you when to come back, because your brother is so angry, I'm afraid he wants to kill you. Oh, well, that didn't take Jacob long to figure out he needed to go. And so he went to visit Uncle Laban, and he stayed there 20 years. It was just going to be people move to Woodstock, and just for a weekend, and they stay for years. 10 years or whatever how it is. 9, is it? Okay. In the meantime, he'd married 2 women and had 2 on the side. That's a whole other story in the Old Testament we won't get into right now. And he had 11 children up to this point, and he figured it's time for me to go back and reunite with my brother. It was something about the land of Israel that God gave to Abraham, that the family of Abraham kept going to and then running away from and then coming back and then going. God was going to do something in this land that he gave to Abraham, so he wanted his people in the land. There's something significant about the land of Israel. Even to this day, Israel is still in the prophetic lineup of God's actions in this world. So something is happening in Israel today, as you know, and it'll work itself out, because Israel is still, as some theologians say, the canary in the coal mine. As goes Israel, so goes the rest of the world. God has got something still in store for Israel. In the Old Testament, it was the first coming of the Messiah. Today, we're not looking for the first coming. We're looking for the second coming of the Messiah, where he will stand in the streets of Jerusalem again. But we're getting ahead of our story. But so he wanted his people back in Israel, even though Jacob was out of the land for 20 years. He wanted them back. So he put in his heart time to go back and reconcile with your family. But by this time, Jacob was a different person. We can tell that because he had much more possessions now, big family. He came to the Jordan River, sent his family across the Jordan River without him to meet his brother. And he says, I'm going to stay here. I got to have a conversation with God. Well, it turned out to be more than a conversation. It was a battle. It was a wrestling match with God. Ever had a wrestling match with your 3-year-old kid? You know, I used to have one with my kid, and I'd take him up and I'd throw him across the room, and he'd go, "Oh!" And my wife would say, "What's happening in there?" "Oh, nothing. We're just playing." When he became 6'1", I stopped. Long before that. But God met him and wrestled with him all night. There's something that Jacob had to get right with him. And wrestle him with God. God, are you real? Is the promise that you made to my father real? And we read that God let Jacob win that battle that night, but so that he would always remember it, he touched the inside of his thigh so that forever after he would always be limping. I love that visual. When you let Jesus into your life is never the same again. There's something different in your life, and people who know you say it. You know, before you became a Christian, you were like this. But ever since you become a Christian, you walk differently. You talk differently. Throughout the whole Old Testament and New Testament, when people come in touch with the living God, their lives are never the same again. Never the same again. And Jacob, from that time on, his life not only changed because of that encounter with God, but his name was changed. Jacob, I don't want people to call you Jacob anymore. The supplanter, the grabber for opportunities, to get anything, do anything to get ahead. That life is gone. I want them to call you Israel now, Prince of God. So his descendants are not Jacobites, they're Israelites. He has a new name, a new identity. Go back and make it up with your brother Esau. And they did. They fell into each other's arms and came into the country. So after we go Abraham, we go Isaac, and then we cut our arm like this and go Jacob, like arm wrestling. Go Isaac, Jacob. Have you met God like that? Has God come into your life? Because when he does, he has a plan. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what the plan was when I was born in England and raised in a plantation in Nigeria, West Africa. My father ran a palm oil plantation. Lived my early life there and then moved. And I've been in maybe 30 different countries. I had no idea what God was planning to do, and I still don't. I'm pretty sure my life will end one day, but I don't know where I'll be or what I'll be doing. You don't know either, because God only wants you to follow him. He doesn't have to tell you where you're going to end up. Because most of us, we can say, I know people say, well, I'm not moving from this town. I'm staying here. Well, good luck on that one. God knows, and God can be trusted. That's the important thing. Nobody knows the future, but time is given to us by God, but God lives outside of time, okay? And he can be trusted, and he is worthy of our trust. So they came back into the land, and the family continued to grow. And but this time now he had 12 sons, 2 wives and 2 concubines. His favorite wife, and by the way, if you're going to have a favorite wife, I can't believe I said that, but if you're going to have a favorite, treat them all the same, because it's jealousy. And if you're going to have more than one child, you need to treat them all the same and not have a favorite child because of jealousy. Well, Jacob didn't read any books about that, so he had one favorite son because he came from his favorite wife, and it's kind of a messy problem. By the way, people say, the ideal for God was the nuclear family. One man, one woman, one child. There's no example in either Old or New Testament of a nuclear family, by the way, unless you consider the Holy Family. But Joseph was a step-parent, really. He wasn't really the son of the father of Jesus. But because we all come from different backgrounds and stuff like that. So stop trying to look for an ideal family. None of us. There is no ideal family. No, we're all doing the best we can. Okay, so just relax. Just relax, and every family has its problems and its difficulties and its challenges, but God still loves us anyways. Okay, so he had one son, Joseph, whom he just doted on. He made him a coat of many colors. He didn't make a coat of many colors to the other boys, and so one day when they were all out looking after the sheep, Joseph was at home, and he came to Joseph and said, your brothers haven't come back for a few days. Why don't you go out and look for them? So he said, okay, Dad, I'm doing it. So he goes out and looks for them. Takes him a couple of days, I'm sure, to find them. And they see Joseph coming over the hill, and they said, now's our chance to get rid of this guy. We hate him. He's always, Daddy's do this, Daddy's that. And Dad doesn't love us like he loves Joseph. So they plotted to kill him. Wow. And Reuben spoke up and said, don't kill him. Here's some Ishmaelites. They're on their way to Egypt, and I know they deal in slaves. There's a chance we can make some money. Let's sell him as a slave. So they sold their brother as a slave to Egypt, and they got his coat of many colors, put goat's blood on it, brought him back to Dad, and said, Dad, look what we found. Man, and they attended the funeral and everything. We are capable of great hypocrisy. Don't look at me as though you would never do that. I'm very good. We would do anything if we knew we wouldn't get caught. Okay, maybe not all of us, but that's the heart of man. That's why we can identify with these stories, because we know our hearts like that too. And I like the Bible because it speaks realistically about the condition that we're in, fallen, okay? And so, anyways, you know the story, how he went to Egypt and interpreted a dream for the Pharaoh. And the dream was that in 7 years they would have plenty, and then 7 years of famine. You need to prepare for the years of famine. And so Pharaoh gave Joseph the job of being the prime minister in the country, and people came from all around to get food from him. And you know the story, how his brothers, because the famine came to Israel as well, eventually found him as the top dog in the kingdom of Egypt. And they were reunited, and in order to stay out of the famine, all 70 of the family of Abraham came down into Egypt and stayed there. They were just going to stay until the end of the famine. They ended up staying 400 years. Oh, isn't time interesting? No, we're just going to do this for a while. Well, things don't always operate the way you think they're going to operate, and so for the next 400 years, Abraham and all his family live in the land of Egypt. So after we go Abraham, we go Isaac, do it with me, Isaac, Jacob, and then Joseph, the coat of many colors, okay? So let's see if we can do that together. Ready? Let's do it. Creation, fall, flood, nations, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Okay, now let's stand up and see if we can do it better standing up, okay? This is the first step in the walkthrough, and we're going to continue it after lunch. Ready? Go. Creation, fall, flood, nations, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Give yourself a hand. Be seated. And so they stayed in the land for 400 years, and by that time there was a Pharaoh who didn't know Joseph, and the story takes another change. After this session, church is over, we're going to put on the screen here a QR code that you can take a picture of and download the workbook for the Old Testament, and there's also other helps there on the Walk Through the Bible app. And there's also a code there that you need to put in. So I hope that you'll come and take a picture of the QR code, download the workbook so you'll have it with you, and come back this afternoon and learn more in the story. God bless you.